My mum told me, 3 weeks before this trip, that a week in Jamaica without a rental car booked was, basically asking for trouble. She's lived in the US almost 30 years. She was born in St. Elizabeth. And somewhere in those 3 decades, she picked up a very American assumption: no car means no freedom. So we tested it. No rental. No ride-hail booked ahead. Just what everybody else on the island actually uses to get around. Kingston for the first few days, then a rural parish for the rest of the week. No backup plan, no hotel shuttle, nothing arranged before we landed. Welcome to TRAILORA, where Jamaica meets the world. Every week we dig into the stories, numbers, and everyday moments that explain how this country actually works, not just how it looks from the outside. If that's your kind of thing, you're in the right place. Here's what happened. I want to be honest about where she started, because it matters for where she ended up. In most of the US, not having a car isn't an inconvenience, it's a wall. Most American cities were built around the assumption that everyone drives, so public transit outside a handful of major metros is thin, infrequent, or just doesn't exist where you need it. My mum has lived that reality for decades. She's the person who maps out gas stations before a road trip. So when I told her the plan, she didn't hear adventure. She heard stranded. She wasn't being dramatic. She was being consistent with everything she'd learned about infrastructure in the country she's lived in for most of her adult life. And honestly, she had a second worry sitting underneath the first one, which she only admitted to later: cost. In America, no car usually means expensive, unpredictable ride-hail fares stacking up fast. She assumed Jamaica would be worse. It wasn't. Not even close. Here's where the numbers actually surprised her. A standard JUTC bus fare in Kingston runs about 100 Jamaican dollars for an adult, well under a US dollar. Route taxis work differently. The transport authority sets a base rate plus a per kilometer charge, rounded to the nearest few dollars, so a short hop across town might run a few hundred Jamaican dollars, still a fraction of what an equivalent Uber ride costs in most American cities. My mum, who's spent years mentally converting every price back to USD out of habit, kept doing the math out loud in the back seat. It never once came out in favor of the rental car she almost booked. But cost wasn't actually the thing that got under her skin. It was the system itself, and here's what she didn't know, or maybe had just forgotten: Jamaica's transportation network looks chaotic from a plane window and functions completely differently once you're standing on the actual road. In Kingston, for roughly every JUTC bus running a fixed route, there are close to 10 route taxis covering the same stretch, red PPV plates, no fixed timetable, picking up whoever flags them down. Add in the government's active push to expand JUTC service, new routes into Clarendon, St. Thomas, and St. Catherine rolled out through 2025 and 2026, with well over 270 refurbished and new buses added to the fleet. Some of them quiet CNG models with USB charging most riders back home wouldn't expect, and you've got a layered system. Formal buses on top. Informal taxis underneath, filling almost every gap between them. It's not empty. It's dense. My mum was scared of a vacuum that doesn't actually exist. But here's the part nobody tells you before your first route taxi ride: the density doesn't remove the anxiety. It just changes what you're anxious about. Her first ride, she told me afterward, was the most nervous 10 minutes of the whole week, and it had nothing to do with the driving. It was not knowing the rules. You flag the car from the roadside, and there's no app telling you it's 3 minutes away. You don't always know the fare until you watch what the person ahead of you hands over. The radio's loud enough that conversations happen in the gaps between songs, not over them. Nobody hands you a laminated guide. You just have to trust that the system, informal as it looks, actually works, because everyone crammed in around you is trusting it too, and has been for years. By day 3, something had flipped. She wasn't the nervous one in the car anymore. She was the one leaning over to explain the fare to me, correcting my Jamaican dollar math, telling me which seat to take so we wouldn't be the last ones out at the next stop. Question is, what actually changed her mind? Because it wasn't the bus schedule. It wasn't even the taxis, reliable as they turned out to be. It was a neighbor. We were in the rural parish by then, at the house of family friends, and one evening there was no route taxi in sight and it was getting dark fast the way it does outside the city, no streetlights, just headlights and porch lights doing the work. Before either of us said a word about it, someone from up the road was already backing their car out of the yard, because that's just what happens. Nobody had to ask. In smaller Jamaican communities, this informal layer, neighbors, family friends, people who simply know you're headed the same direction, fills whatever gap the taxis and buses leave. It's not in any transit report. Staten doesn't measure it in a survey. But it might be the single most reliable part of the entire system, and it's completely unofficial. And that's when she asked me the question that stuck with her the rest of the trip: if a stranger will stop for you here without a second thought, why does that feel almost impossible to imagine back in most American suburbs, where she's lived within 100 feet of the same neighbors for over a decade and barely knows their names? I didn't have a clean answer for her. I'm not sure there is one. But it's worth sitting with, because it points at something bigger than transportation. Worth mentioning too, this isn't a system frozen in the past. Ride-hail apps like InDrive and Uber have been steadily gaining ground in Kingston and Montego Bay, giving both visitors and locals a newer, app-based layer on top of the old one. My mom never opened either app the entire week. She didn't need to. The layer that was already there, buses, taxis, and neighbors, covered everything before technology even had to step in. The infrastructure she'd actually been missing back home wasn't roads, or buses, or app-based ride-hailing. It was people who know your face. That's not something a transit budget can build. It's something that happens when a community stays small enough, and connected enough, that a stranger on the road isn't really a stranger. Now, I want to be careful here, because it would be easy to end this on a nice, tidy, Jamaica has it all figured out note. It doesn't. The same informality that never let my mum feel stranded is exactly what Jamaicans complain about constantly. There's no guaranteed schedule. JUTC itself has publicly acknowledged that reliability, buses actually showing up when they're supposed to, remains a real problem, even with the new fleet investment and rising ridership numbers. Route taxis aren't uniformly regulated, so fares and driver conduct can vary a lot depending on who you get and which route you're on, and fare increases over the past couple of years have made the system meaningfully more expensive for the Jamaicans who rely on it every single day, not just for a week. What felt like charming unpredictability to a visitor for 1 week is, for a lot of people here, a genuine daily frustration they don't get to opt out of. So my mum didn't come home saying Jamaica's system beats America's. That's not the honest version of this story. What she came home saying was that reliability and connection are two different kinds of infrastructure, and somewhere along the way, the US optimized hard for one and quietly lost the other. Jamaica, meanwhile, is still trying to build more of the first without losing what makes the second one work. She was never stranded. Not because the taxis were perfect, and not because the buses always showed up on time. She was never stranded because the system was never just vehicles. It was everyone on that road who might know her family, or know somebody who did. So here's what I want to know from you: do you think a system like this, built on route taxis and neighbors instead of guaranteed schedules, could actually work in an American city? Or does it only work because, in a lot of Jamaica, everybody still genuinely knows everybody? Tell me where you land in the comments. And if you want more of these, Americans experiencing Jamaica in ways they didn't expect, that's basically the whole channel. Subscribe if this is your thing. I'll see you in the next one.